Zelda is one of Nintendo's most iconic franchises, and for good reasons. The games are fun, addicting, give you the sense of adventure, and compared to most Nintendo franchises, these games' stories take themselves seriously for most of the time. So you can expect that Zelda is no stranger to dark moments. Try to remember that this series has a lot of dark moments in it. So if there's a moment you think is dark but isn't on here, then that means I either forgot about it, or I just don't find it as dark as these 15 entries. And, most importantly of all, which should be a given by the way, this list is infested with spoilers throughout the series. That does not include spin-offs, however, so let us begin. Link to the Past is a really good example of one of those parallel universe type games. The dark overworld is very reminiscent of the light world, while still feeling different. Some people might have seen an illusion of the flute boy playing his flute and then suddenly vanishing in the light world. So, if you go to the same place in the dark world, you'll see the flute boy. Just like everyone else in the dark world, he has been transformed into an animal, and he tells you that he left his flute somewhere in the light world. So naturally, you go there, and you use the shovel you borrowed from him to help him dig it up. But once you get it back, he tells you that he can't play it now in its current state, and asks to hear it just one more time. So you play it and... oh my goodness! I can't believe that just happened! When I first saw this happen in the game, I was shocked to see this. Seeing that child get turned into a tree like that. And seeing this happen as a result of him hearing the song you played makes this song kind of sad. The only thing that could make this darker is if he stayed like that for all eternity. But in the end, Link does manage to use the Triforce to set things right. Even still, for one of the first Zelda games ever made, just seeing this happen for the first time, wow! You guys remember Queen Ambi's castle in Zelda Oracle of Ages? Oh, right. Well, for the few of you who have played it, you're probably wondering why her castle isn't there in the future. Well, that's something that they actually do explain, but only in the linked version of Seasons. It's absent from the future because of a reason that's both dark and completely stupid. You can run into Queen Ambi in the Sunken City, and she's on a journey through time and across the lands, where she sees the city in ruins, and gets a stupid idea. Queen Ambi decides to sink her own palace to the bottom of the ocean just to pay homage to the city. Yep, you heard me. Queen Ambi is going to sink an entire castle, drowning herself, as well as all of her knights, just to make a tribute to a long-gone city. Sure, great idea. Oh look, I just found out that one of my friends is going to one of their friends' funeral who died from drinking cyanide. Maybe I should honor that person's death by drinking cyanide myself. What an idiot! Majora's Mask is a game that manages to have a dark atmosphere all the way through, because of what's at stake and how much despair everyone is in. And you can expect there to be more than one entry from that game on here. The first entry from this game to make the list happens after you beat the second boss, then get your hands on the powder keg, and use it to blow up the rock barricade in Romani Ranch on the first day. You meet a young girl named Romani, and she needs your help. Every year, a few nights before the carnival, the ranch gets paid a visit by an invasion of alien ghosts. Your mission? To fend them off until sunrise when they go away. Once they show up at 2:30 in the morning, you must repel them with your arrows, because if you let even one get too close to the barn, the aliens abduct all the poor unsuspecting cows that live there. Pretty messed up thought already, but that's not the worst part. They kidnap Romani too. She is completely gone for the entirety of the very next day, and if you talk to her older sister Cremia, the one who didn't believe Romani, now Cremia feels terrible about herself and wishes she had believed Romani. But Romani comes back on the third day. You'd think that would make this not as bad at first, but she seems to have her personality completely rewritten. Instead of being cheerful, she's depressed and emotionless. How horrible! Though it also makes me question how Romani was able to keep them away for years prior to this game, if she couldn't do it without you. Pretty unsettling though. And if something this dark is at only number 14, that's a sign of things to come. The Lost Woods. one of the most charming locations in the whole franchise. As annoying as it can be at times, it has great ambience, it's enchanting, and it has one of the creepiest things that can happen in the franchise. It is said that if a child that isn't a Kokiri gets lost in the Lost Woods and can't find their way out, they are turned into a Skull Kid. Imagine that. They have their species changed after being trapped in these woods for too long into one of the most flammable creatures in the world. But adults don't have to suffer from this horrible fate. They have to suffer the fate of being turned into a Stalfos. One of these victims being one that Link actually interacted with the human in the trading sequence. After waking him up with Kojiro, Grog asks you to deliver a mushroom to the Kakariko potion shop, where the old lady there gives you an odd potion to bring back to him. But by the time you're back, you see Fato there instead, telling you that Grog has already been turned into a Stalfos. Now, Stalfos are one of Link's everyday enemies that he has to face. This raises an interesting question. Were all Stalfos born as humans and then transformed? Or were some born as Stalfos? Whatever the answer, you can expect that means that sometimes when Link kills a Stalfos, he's destroying creatures that were once human. Guess some sacrifices have to be made for the greater good. Surprisingly enough, even though Twilight Princess was as serious as Zelda can get at the time of its release, I can think of only one real moment from the game that I would consider dark enough to make this top 15. Even the Darkling scene at the lake bed doesn't make the list, because as creepy as it is, most of it is just an illusion, not to mention it comes right out of nowhere, does nothing to the plot, and once it's over, no one ever mentions it again. Leave me alone, that was a golden opportunity to use that. So let's talk about Midna. In the first half of the game, she is completely unlikable, treating you like her own personal servant and not giving a heck about what happens to the light world. But the farther I progressed through the game, the more she develops as a character, and the more I began to care for her. Her kingdom has been overthrown by Zand, and her people were transformed. Midna has probably the worst of it, especially when Zand exposes her to light magic and fatally wounds her. Could you be any more sadistic? Now, Midna is in great danger, and you are left with no other choice. You must hurry back to Hyrule Castle and find Zelda, for it is the only way to save Midna's life. Throughout this whole segment of the game, I couldn't be the only one getting the feeling of desperation during this. So much that even the fact that the music keeps looping didn't ruin this for me. This was the point of the game where Midna finally got my respect. Once you eventually do reach Zelda, she reveals that she does, in fact, have the power to save Midna. But at a cost. Zelda has to transfer her own life energy into her. Midna even calls out to Link to stop Zelda from sacrificing herself, showing that Midna really has gained some compassion, and, unlike this stupid brat, Midna actually learns her lesson. Even though Zelda is resurrected at the end of the game, that is a very dark thought. Definitely proof as to why this powerful moment has earned its spot on the list. Spirit Tracks is one of my favorite games in the whole Zelda series, and one of my favorite games on the DS, and for good reasons. The story, gameplay, and especially the music. So let's look at what happens here. Oh darn, Zelda got attacked. Wait, so that separated Zelda from her body? Well, that happened, but what does Cole need her body for? Turns out that he's planning on using her body to resurrect a demon named Malladus. Because we've never heard of something like that happening before. What makes this different is the fact that there's a point in the game where they make us worry that Zelda will never get her body back. Malladus must be defeated by light arrows, but that has a chance of destroying Zelda's body. That sends shivers down my spine. The thought of one of the staple characters in the series being gone forever, let alone the one that the series is named after. Yeah, I never understood why they called the series Zelda, other than to cause confusion among people who haven't played a Zelda game. But back on point. Zelda does get reunited with her body, but her being killed off for good is more believable than someone like Peach getting killed off for good, because there are multiple Zeldas in the timeline. After all, they did kill off Impa in the next game, so yeah, you understand what I'm saying? So back to Majora's Mask. Let's see what kind of chaos Majora has caused throughout Termina. Well, there is one really dark thing he did, but we'll get to that soon enough. Majora also possessed a Skull Kid and created a giant dragon cloud over Great Bay, poisoned the Southern Swamp, done whatever the heck it did to Ikana Canyon, assuming he even did anything to it considering that place was already messed up to begin with. And we have what takes the number 9 spot. The fact that Majora froze over the mountain village, threatening the lives of many Gorons, putting them in danger of freezing to death. These mountains have been covered in an eternal winter, with the only way to thaw it out being to perform an act of true love. But if only there was someone out there who loved... oh wait, wrong form of media. So Darmani, the warrior of the Gorons, tried to conquer the Snowhead Temple and slay the mass mechanical monster, Goat, and get rid of the snowstorm. When all of a sudden, on his way there, he was blown off the path by a huge blizzard and fell to his death. Once you get the lens of truth and the Goron's lullaby, you discover that the strong wind was actually being blown by a giant Goron, known as Big Goron. That means Big Goron murdered one of his own men. Even if it was because he was being controlled and this wasn't necessarily his fault, this is still creepy if you think about it. The things that happened because of this winter are what make this moment so dark. At least with the southern swamp, there are no known deaths as a result of the swamp's poisoning, except for the enemies you have to kill. Here, there's no questioning it. Now that we're talking about Oracle again, here's something that's dark, and it's supposed to be dark. The adventure starts when Impa asks Link to push a block that only he, the hero of time, can push, so that she can see Nayru, the Oracle of Seasons. After a duet between Link and Nayru, it's then revealed that Impa was actually being possessed by an evil sorceress named Veron. She was using you so that she could get to Nayru, the Oracle of Ages. Now that she's been revealed, she possesses Nayru and uses her powers to travel back in time 400 years, causing disastrous events throughout the land, such as causing many innocent monkeys to fade out of existence, making a kid freeze up because meddling in the past can apparently do that somehow, and making a young man turn old, which is made worse because even when everything is undone, the man doesn't become young again. In the past, Veron renames Ambi's tower into the Black Tower and puts a curse on it so that once completed, she can control time. In an attempt to make sure Veron can reach her goal faster, she creates an endless day so that the men working on the tower never get off work. Can't get much crueler than that. Even after Link frees Nayru from Veron, it doesn't matter. Veron decides to just possess Queen Ambi instead. Eventually, the tower is completed and Veron, now with the ability to control time, unleashes all her torment on the citizens of the Labyrinth region, before you even reach the last dungeon before the tower. For an 8-bit game, that's pretty dark. This even leads to Ralph feeling like he's left with no other choice but to kill both Veron and Queen Ambi. But then it's revealed that Ralph is Queen Ambi's descendant. So even if Ralph goes through with this, he will no longer exist. Even with this knowledge, he would still rather have that than for the kingdom to be doomed. In the end, you do save everything with Ambi and Ralph still alive, but what happened here is messed up beyond belief. What Veron has done has proven that she has the potential to be one of the most evil Zelda villains ever. Which is exactly why Veron should have been the actual villain of the game, and not just a ruse to bring back Ganon. What next? Are you gonna tell me that Maleficent wasn't the actual villain of Sleeping Beauty and was only doing what she did to resurrect Chernobog? The next entry on this list is not dark for story purposes, but the visuals in it can definitely imply something dark must have happened. The bottom of the well is one of the most infamously creepy dungeons in Zelda. While I'm more scared of the ancient cistern, the implications of this place are still enough to put it somewhere on the list. Piles of dead corpses as far as the eye can see, blood patches everywhere, torture devices all over the place, and what the heck caused the birth of the moldy monstrosity known as the Dead Hand? We don't know exactly what happened here, but try telling me there's a good reason behind all this that involves nothing dark at all. Surely the blood patches and corpse piles are proof enough that quite a few people died here. Well, a logical thing to guess would probably be that these contraptions must have been used to kill people, and that the well must have been some sort of torture chamber. Still, I wonder what's up with that dead hand. This place gets even creepier when you consider that someone's house was once on top of this well. Oh boy, now we're getting into the ones that are so undeniably dark that they had to be near the top. Demise is the name of Ganondorf's ancestor, who is said to be an embodiment of pure evil. He is the source of all demons in the Zelda universe, and has been able to conquer time itself. Every time he breaks free, you must seal him again before he rains destruction on the world. It's only when the island of the goddess crushes him that permanently blocks his only way out. Oh, but you didn't think Link's perilous quest ended there, did you? Oh, that's rich! Girahim just uses the Gate of Time to bring back Demise in the distant past, and make all of your work for nothing. He captures Zelda to offer her as a sacrifice to revive Demise, and proves his sadism by sending all of his minions to halt your progress, not caring if every last one of them gets killed. So, in a fit of rage, Link charges down the hill, slaying the enemies he needs to in order to destroy Girahim for everything he's put him and his friends through. Can't say I blame you, Link. After an epic battle between two powerful swordsmen, Girahim reveals that the ritual was still going on as they fought. Finally, the Demon King awakens and devours Zelda's soul. As if Zelda being separated from her body wasn't horrible enough, this time around you can feel Zelda's pain. You see her struggling to break free. You hear her scream in agony as she gets consumed by the horrible monster. But thankfully, Zelda isn't completely gone yet. As long as Link is able to defeat Demise before he regains all of his power, Zelda will be brought back. If not, there will be no hope for everyone, for the entire world will be gone. This scene got my heart pounding. Even seeing Groose run in like this wasn't enough to ruin the suspense of the scene. And to think, this happened at the beginning of the timeline, because it feels like it would happen towards the end. Even after beating Demise in this atmospheric, intense, and admittedly easy final fight, Demise may be gone, but he curses Link and Zelda's descendants to have to face his incarnation, Ganondorf, for many generations to come, who would go on to commit more dark deeds. This is what brings the moment to the list. What's at stake here, and how this led to all the dark events that happened in the series. Speaking of having to face Ganondorf for many generations, what Ganondorf has done in Ocarina of Time is just beyond unforgivable. He's already killed the Great Deku Tree, caused Goron starvation, and turned Jabu Jabu evil. After you get all the spiritual stones, you come back to Hyrule Castle, only to find Zelda and Impa being chased out of their own home by Ganondorf. You must now pull the Master Sword and defeat Ganondorf. But as you enter the Sacred Realm to obtain the Master Sword, when Link pulls it out of its pedestal, he is unfortunately way too young to wield it. So he is put into a 7-year-long slumber, and the last thing he sees being Ganondorf, telling you that you actually opened the Sacred Realm for him, allowing him to get his hands on the Sacred Triforce. Luckily, because he desires power much more than wisdom and courage, he only gets the Triforce of Power. But even with what he has, he still has the power to take over all of Hyrule. Once you exit the Temple of Time, the first thing you notice is that the once happy and lively castle town is now a ghost town inhabited by Redeads. In addition, Zoro's domain has been frozen over, with the only known survivors being Ruto and her father. A Goron-eating dragon named Volvagia is unleashed, forcing Link to kill it, which is basically Link forced to kill his own adopted son if you take the manga into account. But most noticeable of all is Hyrule Castle. Almost nothing remains of the place where you met the Princess Zelda. Now Ganondorf has taken up residence there and made it to his own castle. Eventually, after you defeat him, he even tries to take you down with him as he destroys his castle and tries to crush you under the remains of it. Ganondorf's actions really have helped him live up to his name, the King of Evil. If an entire kingdom being taken over wasn't bad enough already, imagine the thought of an entire kingdom being destroyed. As if Hyrule didn't have it bad enough in the Downfall timeline, the citizens of Hyrule will probably feel better to find out that Lorule, parallel universe to Hyrule, has this even worse. The royal family of Lorule had their kingdom fall into a civil war, and believed that there was only one way to keep bad people from getting their hands on the Triforce. They must destroy the Triforce. But this came at a major cost. For without the Triforce, Lorule was destroyed. It created bottomless chasms in Lorule, splitting the region into 3 parts, making traveling impossible by land, and the people who actually survived this apocalypse had to fend for themselves, with the threat of monsters who now inhabited the kingdom. Princess Hilda, learning of the existence of another Triforce, joined forces with Yuga to capture Hyrule's 7 sages, and revive Ganon in an effort to get their hands on Hyrule's Triforce. Unlike most villains in the Zelda universe, Hilda actually has a somewhat understandable reason for doing this, because she wanted to save her own kingdom, making her actions more justified than other villains in the series. Despite the fact that Link and Zelda used their Triforce's power to bring back the Lorule Triforce and save Lorule in the end, the thought of this kingdom falling into ruins like that is still enough to put it up here. And now it is time for the whole reason why I waited to do my list until this year. I was waiting for Breath of the Wild to come out, and then for Halloween for a good time to upload this. And I'm glad I did, because next up we have the destruction of Hyrule from Breath of the Wild. We don't know where it takes place on the Zelda timeline, because they haven't confirmed it. I'm going to guess it happens somewhere in the Downfall timeline, because of how it says that Link was defeated by Ganon, or should I say Calamity Ganon, for whatever reason they decided to call him that. But this game apparently takes place 10,000 years after Ocarina of Time. My gosh, that makes me feel uncomfortable. Now, Zelda is left as the only remaining member of her family. Hyrule has almost been completely destroyed, with comparison between some areas making me feel sad just thinking about them. At least in Ocarina of Time, Hyrule was still intact then. This time, everything's been filled with chaos. Unfortunately, that's not all Ganondorf has done. He's also corrupted the 4 divine beasts. Ruda with flooding the land, Rudania terrorizing Gorons with constant eruptions, Mido attacking the citizens of Rito Village, and Rudania creating huge sandstorms and thunderstorms. Link tried to stop the divine beasts with the help of the 4 Hyrule champions, Mipha, Daruk, Revali, and Urbosa, but all 4 of them were killed by the blights that were created by Ganon. Meanwhile, Link was knocked out by several guardians and brought to the Shrine of Resurrection, where he was put into a deep sleep for 100 years, and lost his memory of everything that happened. Oh, and that's not even mentioning the monsters being resurrected by the Blood Moon. No, please anything but that! Every moment up to here was indeed very dark, but try having a feeling of despair throughout an entire game. Yep, we're finally at the Majora's Mask Moon entry, which would inevitably make it to the list. When I first played this game and the Happy Mask salesman told me that I had to get his mask back within 3 days, I was like, yeah, right. They all say that, but you always have all the time you need to go through the game. But this wasn't like those instances. When I walked outside, I was in for a big surprise. You actually do have 3 in-game days, or 72 hours in real time, to get back to Majora's Mask. For Majora has possessed the moon, and threatened to crash it into the world, destroying it. Unlike the entries leading up to that, which say that something's at stake but you don't actually see what happens if you lose, Majora's Mask went beyond that, and actually shows you the result of your failure if you don't succeed. Good thing you can go back to the first day, otherwise this game would probably be impossible, but my gosh is this dark! Even people's reactions are realistic. The carpenters don't believe this will happen, the swordsmaster believes he can slice the moon in half, but when the time comes he is shuddering in a corner begging to live. The postman feels like he's tied to a schedule, Kathy and Andrew deciding to die together. What else do I need to say? This is the darkest game that the Zelda franchise has ever created. But despite being the darkest Zelda game, this isn't what I would call the darkest Zelda moment, if you can believe that. There's still one more to go. Ah, Wind Waker. Such a beautiful game filled with beautiful graphics, beautiful music, and a beautiful ocean. Sailing across it can be an absolute joy for me. Well, as long as we're not thinking of what lies beneath these waters. For the #1 spot, we have the Great Flood. This vast, wide open ocean was once Hyrule until a great flood sealed it off and killed thousands of innocent people. Back at the end of Ocarina of Time, after Link slays Ganon in the adult timeline, Ganondorf is sealed away and all is well. But then, many years later, Ganondorf came back and unleashed his reign of terror on Hyrule once again. Everyone believed that Link would come and save them as he did before, but alas, he didn't show up. Everyone was now left with only one more option, to ask the Hylian gods to put an end to Ganondorf. The Hylian gods then created the Great Sea to wash away all of Hyrule, taking countless unsuspecting lives with it. This earns its spot at the top of the list, because unlike the other cataclysms in the Zelda franchise, which were either preventable or got undone at the end, here it's both inevitable and never gets undone. The areas we all know and love from Hyrule don't exist anymore. The charm of the Lost Woods, the beauty of Zora's Domain, the peaceful nature of Kakariko Village, all gone. Forever. Even though Majora's Mask is still a darker game than this for how it retains its dark atmosphere throughout the whole adventure, the Great Flood overall is what I find darker than every dark moment in Majora's Mask. It's so dark, it actually makes the adult timeline even darker than the Downfall timeline. This is so sad that I actually don't blame Ganondorf for being angry at the gods. Even the fact that a new Hyrule was found in Spirit Tracks doesn't undo the harm that was done to the old one. There was nothing I could do to prevent this from being what I believe is the darkest moment in all of Zelda. And that concludes this Halloween countdown. I will see you all in my next video.